All right, so welcome to our ORCID US and ORCID CA community call on the Affiliation Manager. To begin, we'll start with a few introductions. So next slide. Your ORCID US community staff are pictured here. Sheila Rabin, the Senior Strategist of Research Infrastructure Programs, Paolo Guhilde, the Strategist for the ORCID US community, and myself, Kayla Ramhit, the Program Assistant for the ORCID US community. Next slide. Today's session is also hosted by our colleagues from the ORCID Consortium in Canada, whom you see pictured here, John Aspler, Manager of the Canadian Persistent Identifier Community, and Ursula Carmichael, Canadian Persistent Identifier Community Officer. The two of them work with ORCID Consortium members in Canada. Next slide. So I'll also go over our agenda for today. Starting us off will be an overview of ORCID's Affiliation Manager, what it is, how to use it, and what it can do. And then we'll have 3 case studies from different organizations on how they're using the Affiliation Manager. So John Aspler will speak on how CRKN is using Affiliation Manager. Then we'll hear about Lyrasis from Sheila Rabin. And then we'll also hear from the University of Pennsylvania. Our speaker, Linda Kellum, will also be talking to us. And then at the very end, we will have a Q&A, questions and answers. Next slide. And so now I will hand things over to Paolo to give you an introduction and overview of the Affiliation Manager.
Thank you, Kayla. I hope you all can hear me all right. So welcome again, everyone. I'm Paulo Guhilde. I'm the strategist for the ORCID US community. So in the next few slides, in the next few minutes, we're just going to talk a little bit about what Affiliation Manager is. So just a quick overview of the Affiliation Manager. All right, so what is ORCID's Affiliation Manager? So many of you are familiar with this a little bit already. So the Affiliation Manager, it pushes and writes affiliation information to ORCID records. So there are 7 affiliations in ORCID. So the first one is employment. We also have education, qualifications, invited positions, memberships, distinctions, and service. So those are the areas where an organization can write to ORCID, to somebody's ORCID record using the Affiliation Manager. So the Affiliation Manager, it is a built-in tool in ORCID's member portal. So most of you that are members of ORCID through the consortium should have access to the member portal. And it does require one ORCID member API key. So to enable the functionality of the Affiliation Manager in the member portal, you will have to use one of your ORCID member API keys. And as I mentioned, this functionality, this Affiliation Manager, is only available to consortium members. So you would have to be a member of the ORCID US community or the ORCID CA community to be able to use the ORCID Affiliation Manager. All right, so why Affiliation Manager? So these are just some of the benefits of using the Affiliation Manager. The first one is to confirm a researcher's affiliations. So confirming researcher affiliations is really, it can improve the accuracy and trust among the research ecosystem. So essentially, you would be writing that particular employment or affiliation to your employees or to the committee members or any other ORCID users in their ORCID record, and the source of that ORCID entry or that record in their ORCID record, the entry in their ORCID record will be your organization. So an example here where we send out an affiliation via Lyrasis ORCID member portal. So the source is Lyrasis. Another benefit is also the visibility and recognition for your researchers, and of course, the visibility and recognition of your organization. So what it is having your source in the ORCID record. You'll be able to show that this employee works at your organizations and that their outputs and the recognition that your researchers are receiving will be connected to you. So essentially, everyone can see that this particular researcher works for your organization. So that means that whatever they have in their ORCID record can also be associated to your organization since they work for you. So it recognizes your organization as a contributor to the entire research ecosystem. And ultimately, ORCID is really about saving time and reducing administrative burden. So having that information in their ORCID record, they'll be able to use those affiliation entry when they apply for, say, a grant, or if they publish their manuscripts, their research. So they'll be able to log into a particular system, transfer data from their ORCID record to that system. So if they're applying for a grant, they can fill out their application, the grant application, with information that's coming from your organization, so such as employment and any other activities in the affiliation area. So now let's kind of look at a little bit what the general workflow of the affiliation manager is. So this, what you're seeing on the screen, is essentially how a general workflow of affiliation manager works. So essentially, this is more of a sort of like a batch upload to a system, but essentially you would have a record or information about your employees or anyone that you want to push affiliations data to. So you can have either a CSV file or you can enter it manually, and we go through that in a little bit. And you would go to your member portal, upload that to your affiliation manager. Once it's uploaded to the affiliation manager, you will then be able to grab um, permission links. So permission links is essentially something that you could send to your researchers, to the ORCID users, to give you permissions. So basically giving your organization permission to access and write affiliation to their ORCID record. So here there are two ways that it can be done. You can download a CSV file of all the affiliations, the permission links, and then you can send it via email. Um, through your organizational email, or you can also send an email via the member portal. So that email will then go to your researchers. They will click on the permission link. And once they click on it and given you permission by logging into their ORCID record or creating an ORCID ID, the information that you sent to their ORCID record will then be published in their ORCID record. So it will be available there. So for example, so-and-so is an assistant professor at this organization, that will show up in their ORCID record. They can also deny that access if they want to. Ultimately, ORCID, the researcher has full control of their ORCID record. And now we'll go through a little bit, just kind of a step-by-step process on how that would look like in the affiliation manager. So I'm not going to go too much into details here, as our speakers today will talk more about the case studies and how they do and how the process in their own organization work or in the organization work. So you'll be able to see more details there. So first, if you go into your member portal, you can click on Tools and then click on Affiliation Manager. Once you do that, it will take you to this page where it will show you where the different areas where you can add basically different kind of buttons to add affiliations. So the first one is add affiliation, is essentially a manual entry of adding affiliation. The second button that says import affiliations from CSV, that is a batch upload. So if you're adding multiple folks, adding multiple affiliation, so you can do a CSV file to make that easier. All right, and this is an example of a manual entry. So you can click on a manual entry by adding an affiliation. So the red things that you'll see here on the different fields are the required area in adding affiliation. So that would be the email address, so the user's email address. So let's say if you are writing an affiliation to my ORCID record, it will be my email address that you will input there. The affiliation type, and again, there are 7 affiliation types. So education, employment, invited positions, distinctions, membership, service, and qualifications. The organization name, so that would be your organization, the city, the country, the organization ID source. So we're looking at here is basically either ROAR, GRID, or Ringgold IDs. And then you will also add the organization ID itself. And those are your required fields. We always highly recommend to input other information here, such as department, role, the year, so that's the start year, the end year. So basically information, additional details that you want to push to somebody's ORCID record. So that is very helpful to have. And this is just an example of a filled out form, what it looks like. So you'll see kind of the different areas where the data is available here. And you'll see that there's the start year of 2024. So you can do that. You can also update it with additional information at a later time. And if you click on, once you added that information, you can go to the status and then click on the entry that you were pushing, and you can see these are just the details. So you have the ID. That's a unique ID specific for the affiliation entry. I think our speakers will talk a little bit more about that. And then also you have the email address and then the permission link that you will send to your the ORCID user. And on this slide, it's basically we're just talking about a batch upload via a CSV file. So multiple people, you're adding multiple affiliations to different people. So this is a way for you to just do it all at once. And then you will just go import that affiliations from CSV, add the file in, and then click upload. Once that's uploaded, you can go ahead and request the permission links. So basically the permission links that you are going to send to the ORCID users. And this is going to be sent via email. So once you click request permission links, you will receive an email with the file that you are seeing at the bottom of the screen. So sort of like a CSV file, essentially with the email addresses of all the ORCID users that you are sending information to or affiliations and all the links that that is associated to that email address. So you will be able to send that permission links via either the member portal, or we always recommend to use your organization's email, so that way you can customize the email that you are sending to the ORCID users or to anyone that you want to push affiliation to. This way you can customize it with your own messaging, with your own branding, and the links as well. And I believe Sheila will show you how this looks like, how this will look like in a case study later on. So once the researchers have given permissions, so they click on that link, they've given your organization permission to update their ORCID record. The information will then be available in their ORCID record. So in this example, this is actually my ORCID record. So you can kind of see that we push the Lyrasis information via the ORCID member portal. So my employment from Lyrasis appeared here. And that's compared to the bottom employment information, where I entered that myself manually. So the source is just my name. And this is just a detailed information when you click on showing the details of the information that's being sent to ORCID. So additional informations of ROR, when it was added, all of those things are available here as well. You can also check the status of the affiliations being pushed in the ORCID record. So if you push, say, 10 or so, or even hundreds of affiliations in your through the affiliation manager, you can see what's going on with that particular entry that you push. So when you push that data, when researchers have either given you permission that you can access and update their information, it will say that the status will say in ORCID. If they have not given permission, the status will say pending, as you can kind of see on this red box here. So there's a pending and there's an ORCID in ORCID. There are additional status as well that's available here. You can find out more about the other status by going through the affiliation manager guide, which I believe Kayla will share on the chat. And you can always also contact us when you have any questions about this as well. And for any future affiliations being pushed to, say, somebody's ORCID record that already given permission, they will receive an email that a new update has been um, basically added to their ORCID record. So this is an example where with my ORCID record, where we push another affiliation of service actually to my ORCID record, and I received this notification via email. So this will show up in my email that's associated to my ORCID record, as well as it will also show up in the ORCID inbox email when you log into your ORCID record. And I think with that, I'm gonna pass it on to our speakers to talk more about in details about their case studies.
Thanks so much, Paolo. I think I'm up first. So, hi everyone, bonjour à tous. Comme d'habitude, si vous avez des questions en français, on vous invite à les poser en français. Just if you would like to ask questions in French, we are more than happy to take them in French. So, as many of you know, I'm John Aspler. I work at the Canadian Research Knowledge Network with Ursula Carmichael, and we run the ORCID Canada Consortium. Next slide, please. So we joined our own consortium in June 2021 for a number of different reasons, but pretty much immediately, whenever the affiliation manager was launched, it was probably somewhere around that time, maybe a little bit earlier, we started using it right away. But our use case was fairly limited. We're not a university, we're not a research organization. For those of you in the US who may not know what CRKN is, we're a very similar organization, sort of centrally to what Lyrasis is. We do the negotiations and licensing with publishers on behalf of Canadian academic libraries. We also run our PID program in Canada. So we also have a DataCite Canada consortium and an ORCID Canada consortium. So our use case was fairly limited. We're a small organization. We currently have 33 employees. At the time I joined, we maybe had 23 employees. So maybe I added a dozen affiliations in the employment category for CRKN staff. Not everyone at CRKN is an academic librarian, has an academic past, does academic work. Even though we write all kinds of reports, not everyone is going to have things they want to put into an ORCID record. So this was really just not even a formal project. It was just something I was doing for fun to test out the tool, to demonstrate it to our members. I was just adding employment for any of my colleagues who were interested. Then at some point, we started to talk about what we could do with the tool a little bit more formally. And as ORCID released a tool called the Affiliation Report, I can't remember when that came out, but it was later than the Affiliation Manager. It's the report that includes the full list of everyone who has publicly affiliated themselves with your institution. Inside the affiliation report, I noticed that a couple of people had added board membership at CRKN. We have many different committees and boards. And it suddenly appeared to us that maybe this was an opportunity to run a project in an area of professional activity affiliation that maybe isn't as represented in ORCID period, and certainly through the affiliation manager. So today there are 42 ORCID IDs that have received updates from us with 58 affiliations. So that means that a few people have multiple affiliations. 36% of those are CRKN staff employment and 64% are board service. And in a minute, I'll just emphasize, although I did this initially for a couple of people who, again, we just saw had done it themselves, we offered to do it for them. We are specifically focusing down on 3 committees that CRKN runs supporting persistent identifiers. We've currently done all current board members, where we've done a little bit of past board membership, but we want to sort of formalize that process and really make sure that we capture as many people as we can. And then finally, we also give out an annual award, something that would fit into the distinction category. So that's something that we really want to start considering going forward. Next slide, please. So a couple of insights that I want to share from our use of the tool. What you can see here is that these are affiliations that I've added to my own ORCID record. And what you can see is that the organization title, Canadian Research Knowledge Network, CRKN, Réseau Canadien de Documentation pour la Recherche, RCDR, that is not what we found in the ORCID drop-down menu at the time. Sure, someone could type it out manually in ORCID, but in order to actually have the kinds of detailed information here with the ROR identifier and all of these other little bits of metadata, you have to choose from the drop-down menu if I'm entering this manually. So from the affiliation manager, I can choose to be consistent, but also specifically choose how to express the organization name. So having the bilingual title, having both acronyms, that was something that we really wanted to do because at the time, the only option in the ORCID drop-down menu was the English title. So we wanted it to reflect everything. So that's how we were just able to do that with the affiliation manager. And we can do that for every single person consistently as we add their affiliations. The other thing to flag here is that you'll notice that there are two job listings here. This is a practice that is very much recommended by ORCID. I started at CRKN as the ORCID Canada Community Manager, and then later I was promoted to the Manager of the Canadian PID community. This is something that is reflected as two separate affiliation entries in my ORCID record, and is something that you should be doing with your professors, with your employees, whatever kind of use case you have. As things change over time, you should make sure to reflect that. Next slide, please. Very briefly, I mentioned that we have 3 persistent identifier committees that we run at CRKN. There's a governing committee for ORCID Canada and a governing committee for DataCite Canada. They have a very similar structure, which includes 9 elected voting members and a 10th voting member who is from the advisory committee. They share an advisory committee called the Canadian PID Advisory Committee, the CPDAC. The chair and the vice chair of that committee sit on either of the ORCID CA or DataCite Canada governing committees. And the CPDAC is ever expanding. It's a huge representative group, or it's a huge group representing many different organizations. I think we're up to 28 members at the moment. So that's a lot of committee members to add things for. And I should say that the CPDAC is one that we're really starting to work on. We haven't done too much there. It's the governing committees that we've really done the work to update. Next slide, please. This is just from the current chair of the CPDAC's ORCID record. Again, you can see that there are 3 separate entries here to reflect different periods of time in this person's service. First of all, the CPDAC used to just be the ORCID Canada Advisory Committee. So you can see the bottom entry from 2018 to 2020 reflects that previous representation, plus the organization being represented here. It's CARL, the Canadian Association of Research Libraries. Then from 2020 to 2024, Susan was just a member of the committee. And as of March 5th this year, Susan was elected as the new chair. So all 3 of these roles are reflected in her ORCID record. Next slide, please. So this brings me to the end of this use case. As you can see, it's fairly limited in scope, but it's also doing something that we think only we can do. And it's something we're pretty excited about doing. And I just wanted to highlight some considerations. I've already mentioned what version of your institutional name do you want to employ. It's very easy to change this over time if you need to. Not that Ryerson University, Toronto Metropolitan University was using the affiliation manager at the time, but if they had been, that would have been a very easy fix, like Paolo was showing. A couple little things I wanted to highlight. Visibility concerns. Although the entry might appear as in ORCID in the affiliation manager, that doesn't mean it's actually going to appear publicly because the person has to make sure to change their visibility settings for that item. I've had a few committee members I've had to reach back out to say, hey, it's great, it's in ORCID, thanks for accepting, can you please make it public? And usually that's just human error, nothing to do with any serious issues, but just something to consider. Another thing, in Canada, we have a lot of French characters that are part of our organization titles and names. In the States, I would expect maybe some special characters associated with Spanish organizations and names. Just be careful with how you're managing the CSV or Excel file. Some things can get reformatted in weird ways. Excel has some issues around that, and just make sure you're using a UTF-8 file. This is also relevant for dates. If you have dates that are just month and year, or even just year, sometimes when you sort of go to do something and re-upload a CSV file with other information you're changing, that can have an impact on the dates as well. So just watch out for that. I've already mentioned the different roles over time. I've had multiple jobs at my organization. People have multiple board associations with the same boards. The last thing here is just the strategic planning piece that I want to mention. CRKN is small enough that I'm just managing this myself. It's not difficult. Like I said, we have 42 individuals who've received this. I'm sending out 1 email at a time per individual, working with them. It's easy for me to do that because of our scope. But if you are working with hundreds to thousands of scholars, you're going to need to think about how to update those things over time. That's going to take some strategic planning, because do you want to do this quarterly? Do you want to do this biannually? Are you doing this upon request? How are you making sure that end dates are appropriately reflected, et cetera, et cetera? So with that, thank you.
sorry, I was muted. I'm just going to share a very brief case study of how we're using the Affiliation Manager at Lyrasis, which is the home of the ORCID US Community Consortium. And I'm Sheila Rabin, and I manage the ORCID US Community Program. We also have a data site program, and there's another service called IRIS that I manage. It's institutional repository usage statistics. So if we go to the next slide, I'll start telling you all about what we're doing. We're very excited about this. I have wanted to use the Affiliation Manager ever since it came out, because we have a lot of people, many of whom are on this call, that basically volunteer to present at community calls and webinars and showcases and all of these kinds of things, not only for our ORCID US community and our other research infrastructure programs, but also for other communities that Lyrasis serves. So you may know that Lyrasis is also the home of the DSpace open source community, archive space, collection space, Fedora, etc. And so Lyrasis just became an ORCID member on August 1st of this year. And we were prepared right at that start date to start using the Affiliation Manager. We were so excited about it because this means we can actually start to recognize the people that have been volunteering their time to basically serve these various communities. So we started with a pilot, just looking at anyone who is affiliated with the ORCID US community, our data site consortium, and also the IRIS program that I mentioned. So we were looking at service affiliations for anyone who has volunteered on behalf of one of these programs. And we also have an awards program for the ORCID US community. So we've been writing or pushing distinctions for anyone who has won an ORCID US community award. And we were looking at from the start of the program in 2018 until now. And so we have sent out 91 affiliations, and out of those, 49 of them have been accepted and they're in ORCID. So that's just over half of the people that we've sent these Affiliation Manager links to have accepted those requests, and they're in their ORCID record. And so this was our pilot. We just kind of wrapped that up, and we do have plans to extend use of the Affiliation Manager to other areas of Lyrasis. So like I mentioned, people who potentially have served on like DSpace committees and just other areas. So service to other programs, distinctions for other awards, employment for Lyrasis employees, and potentially other things too. So on the next slide, let's see what we've got going on. Okay, so again, for us, our organization is relatively small. We're not a giant university. We're going to hear from Linda from University of Pennsylvania in a minute to get more of that large institution insight. So for us, gathering this information for our pilot was relatively easy because we already had a good record of who our volunteers were and who won awards from the past 6 years. And so that was about 80 people just for our ORCID US program. One challenge was we did have to track down a few email addresses for people who were no longer at the institution that they were at when they did the volunteer work for us. But if you're at a university or other organization that has employees, for example, you're probably just going to be focused on the people who are currently at your institution. So this was a little bit of a unique thing for us because we're working with people who don't work at Lyrasis. They were just volunteers from other organizations. All right, so moving on. So yeah, this screenshot just kind of shows you what an example of what our CSV file looked like. And you can see here that basically all of the information is the same for everyone. So we did have to make some decisions about how specific to get with representing service. And we decided to just go with presenter for the role title. We didn't go into detail about like, oh, you presented at a webinar versus you presented at a showcase versus an annual meeting. We didn't go into those kinds of specifics because we wanted to keep it very standardized. Except for those who got distinctions. So for the distinctions, we indicated what kind of award they won. But the URL, which is an optional field, you don't have to include a URL. We decided to include the URL, which is the last column here, which takes you to a web page that then lists out the volunteers and more specifically what they each did, because we want to make sure we're recognizing all of our volunteers. All right, so on the next slide, I would say the most challenging thing that we had to figure out was how to send the emails out to each individual person to get them to click on their unique link and give us approval. And because we were kind of working with a backlog of about 80 people, we decided to use like a mail merge tool called Constant Contact, and we had to work with our member communications team at Lyrasis to do this. So we had to do several rounds of testing to make sure it was going to work correctly. Another thing is the unique links that the affiliation manager gives you are very long and they're not pretty and they're kind of unwieldy. So we made a decision to convert those to tiny URL so it would be more approachable in the email that everyone got. And so you can see a screenshot of what that email template looked like. So we were able to use our kind of logos, and then you can see the tiny URL in the first step here. And we tried to keep it very like as short and succinct as possible while still giving people the information that they needed to know what this email is and what they need to do with it. I will say on the next slide, for people who had volunteered for our data site work and our IRIS program, that was far less people than the ORCID US community. It was probably about 10 people total. And so for those, we just did personal emails sent to each individual person from me. So here's a screenshot of one of those emails. So people could recognize, they know who I am, so they're getting the email. And so that was kind of more one by one because it was a smaller number of people. So we actually used both the kind of mail merge template and also personalized one by one emails. On the next slide, I think I've got, yeah, just some notes that we have been receiving positive feedback from people who we have pushed their affiliation to their ORCID record. They're just really excited to have that kind of that green check mark, like a trusted affiliation there. Doing it this way, those green check marks, ORCID calls them trust markers because it kind of shows other stakeholders that yes, the organization is confirming that this person is in fact affiliated with the organization. And so it's a good example that a lot of people in our community who have volunteered now have this, they can show other people at their organization. And we've heard that some of them are getting inspired to now try using the affiliation manager at their own institution for various things. And my considerations to leave you with here are, you know, it can maybe seem a little overwhelming or daunting to think about pushing affiliations to every single person at your organization. So my recommendations would be, no matter where you're located at your organization, try to just start with what you can control. Like we started with our pilot of just looking at people who have volunteered for programs that we manage. So we're starting with that. And kind of we created a formula or a workflow that can be replicated by other areas of the organization. And our plans are to kind of iteratively roll it out to other areas of the organization. So that seemed to kind of take that overwhelm away and kind of start small and then think about rolling it out to more and more people. And that way you also have an example that you can show to other departments, other units at your organization to say, hey, this is what we did for the people we know about. Maybe y'all have people that you want to write affiliations to. And I think that's it for me. And I'm going to hand it over to Linda Kellum, who has graciously volunteered to share her insights from using the Affiliation Manager at the University of Pennsylvania. And I think, Linda, we'll let you share your own screen if you'd like. I believe you're muted, Linda.
Sorry, yeah, let me just getting set up 1 second.
Okay, no worries.
Let's see. I think this is the right one. Can you see the slides on this one, or is it showing up?
Looks great.
Awesome. Great. So thank you for having me come in and talk about this. My name is Linda Kellum. I'm the Director of Research Data and Digital Scholarship at Penn Libraries. And I've been at Penn for going on 3 years in this coming January, but in this position since February of 2023. I'll talk a little bit about what we do. I will start out by saying that this is a very much work in progress, and as previous presenters were talking about, we definitely started small when it came to this, although it exploded pretty quickly. And I'll talk about how that happened in a minute. So my team at Penn is Research Data and Digital Scholarship. This group was created in 2020. There were other efforts like ours going around in the library, but at the unit that preceded us was very different from our unit. So we support a wide array of services, from data management, GIS, data science, to digital publishing and digital humanities, and the institutional repository. So you can see this is a slide that we created just to go through the different kinds of tools that we support in our department. And the one thing that's been interesting, like I said, this team was created in 2020. It had a different director at that time, and the director moved into a new position in 2023. So when I took over, one of the questions we had was, where would ORCID sit in kind of the array of services that we provide? And the previous director, she just did all of the ORCID work herself. And so we're still trying to think about kind of where this kind of service area would fit within the things that we do. It isn't just within our department, though. We also work closely with our medical librarians, medical school librarians, and the engineering librarian from Penn is on here today, as well as the business school librarians and other people to try and support users. But like I said, this is a work in progress, and we're still trying to figure out where this would sit in our organization and in our department. So these are the stats for what we have. As of yesterday, we have 3,658 people who are have affiliated ORCIDs with Penn. I wanted to look at who those were. Most don't provide a specific department, so that's about 60%. 67% do not provide a specific department. But of those who do, most are obviously from the School of Medicine, the Perelman School of Medicine. It's about 900 of those, 75% of them, and the rest are from all over campus. And you can see, probably can't, well, you might be able to see pretty well that it goes from School of Medicine to engineering and arts and sciences, and then kind of starts leveling off after that. So there's a lot of room for growth. There's certain areas that we've done pushes, obviously School of Medicine. I'll talk about that in a minute. But there's many more places to grow in our university. And as was mentioned, we have a very large university. So it's a lot of work to be done trying to reach out to all of our users. That being said, there are about 10,000 people in our affiliation manager who've never accepted the affiliation. And And I'll talk about why we have so many who have never accepted. I don't think that's necessarily a negative thing. It's just that the mechanism by which they were put into the system, I think that's something to think about when you're doing this kind of work. So the initial effort, when I arrived at Penn in January of 2022, my predecessor was working on this project to try and integrate ORCID more into the Penn ERA system. So the Penn ERA system is the grant systems in our university, so it controls it's the manager for the grant system, and they were very interested in trying to integrate that into what they had. So everyone in the Penn ERA system at that time, so this is about February 2022, was asked to affiliate if they had an ORCID. That's where we got the initial 10,000 people from, was they were sent links to request affiliation with our ORCID system. So that means that they were a CSV file was created, they were uploaded into the affiliation manager, and then request links were sent to them asking them to affiliate. My understanding, again, this is right after I'd started, is that is where that high number comes from, partly is from this effort. They also added a field in Penn ERA where they can include their ORCID profile link, so their ORCID ID. Once they do this, the ORCID ID appears on their Penn ERA entry. But unfortunately, right now, there's no kind of data exchange between the two systems. That's something that they weren't quite at that time comfortable with, and so we haven't pushed in that direction yet. So my understanding, these are the question that Jessica has asked, 3,658 users at Penn who have accepted the affiliation permission to link request. My understanding is they accepted the permission to link. I assume that's the same thing, though that might be a question for ORCID to distinguish those two. Not sure. So the next effort, this is more what I've been working on, is with working with the School of Medicine. They were very interested in having their MED students affiliate with ORCID, and encouraging them to create ORCID IDs at all. Most of them do not have any kind of ORCID ID. And so what we do each year is the admin of that program, and this is just one small program in the university, sends the CSV file to me that has emails and the departments. And then we push that into Affiliation Manager and create permission links. Those request permission links created when you click that, you get a CSV that has the links for all those users based on their email. And you can then take that subset of users and send them an email inviting them to affiliate or to create an ORCID ID. So I send those links to the email in emails to the admin, the CSV back to the admin, and they are the ones who do the batch email promoting ORCID to their students. This is something that they take control over, and they talk about the benefits of ORCID. It's really nice to have that. It's really nice to have that support, because I can't necessarily do mail merges for everybody on campus, and we have a good relationship with this group, so we work together to try and push out those requests, or push out those permission links to the students. So that's usually the beginning of the year when the students first start, and then we repeat this later in the semester for the students who have not accepted. So they do try to actually encourage the students to become affiliated in some way. that group, that MAD group in particular, has a high uptake because of the fact that the admins are so involved with it, and they're being sent I think because they're being sent the permission link by people who they know and they recognize. So having some kind of support in the university in that way, I think, is really important. We've also started doing this tentatively with, or started a process with the School of Nursing PhD program. There's only about 20 some students in that program at all. And so that's a place that we started the same process, but that just started in spring. So that's one we haven't really seen growth in yet. And then one of the things that I did that was completely by accident, and sometimes accidents happen, but it may have been a happy accident is the way I'm going to look at it. When I first took over the system from my predecessor, I was looking around at the different tools within the Affiliation Manager, and clicked on send permission notifications to the entire 10,000 people, group of 10,000 people that are in the system. So of course, those people should have gotten an email about 2 years ago about affiliating with ORCID. So some people had familiarity with it, but others did not. And it got a great response in terms of people wanting to know what this ORCID thing was. A few people from the different ITs in our school were getting in touch with us, asking us if this was coming from us. And I had several people reach out and just ask me what it was and whether or not it was something that was legitimate. Was it something that we really supported at Penn? And from that was able to see affiliations in the 10,000. So that's another way that we got the increase in affiliation at Penn. So I would encourage you that with the send permission notifications, be careful with that. I did not realize that would go out to the entire group of people just by clicking on it. So only click it if you mean it. It's probably my big guidance there. And then when it comes to future plans, one of the big things is creating a targeted outreach campaign for the International Open Access Week 2024, which is in October. We are going to do, we haven't done a presentation on ORCID in a while, so we're going to do a presentation on ORCID, and one of my people in my department came up with a wonderful idea to do friendship bracelets of ORCID IDs. So we've got the supplies to create a friendship bracelet, so you can create it for your ORCID ID. We will also be helping people create their ORCID IDs and affiliate with Penn during that session. One of the things that's come up since in the past few months is trying to understand how we can better use the API to track unaffiliated researchers, or track affiliated and unaffiliated researchers and researcher output. This is something that I'm not going to be able to be part of, but our Office of Assessment is interested in this. Our engineering librarian is interested in this, and others are. So it's something that we're looking into, working on next. For me, I'm more interested in ways to educate and support our users. We've had workshops and presentations in the past, so this is something I'd like to revive and make sure that we are educating the campus community about ORCID. And then finally is creating a workflow for updating user entries. So some points people were asked for end dates, but when you saw in previous presentations, you can add a start date and end date to the affiliation. In some cases, those were added. In other cases, they weren't over the pushes we've been doing. So I've been making sure that I'm asking for an end date. So that's matriculation date in case of the students, what we've been using. In terms of changing, in terms of updating user entries manually or updating them on my side, I've only had one person request that I make a change. So it hasn't been very laborious, but that's something where we also trying to figure out a way to support that better. And the reason why we don't have this figured out now, again, we are a new department. I'm relatively new in my role, and we have a wide array of services that we support. So ORCID is just one of the things that we have right now. And yeah, I'm excited about my group is very into any kind of crafting that they can come up with. So they're very excited about the hands-on tangibility of creating friendship bracelet. Anything that I can do like that, they get really excited about. So as I said, this is a work in progress for us, even at Penn. And I think one of the things that we do, we are a very, very large institution. We only have a small slice of our Penn users in this. I'm still trying to understand the process and working through the workflow and how it would work with our institution. So I certainly am not got it all figured out, but I'm always learning from other people and trying to figure out how to do new things. So that's about it. And if we have any questions, please let me know. Or if you have ideas to share, please also let me know.
Awesome. Thanks, Linda. Okay, I'm going to go in and make it so that people can unmute. And also turn on video if you'd like. Ursula, you want to take us through some Q&A?
For sure. So yeah, now we'll open it up to some questions and discussion. We only have about just shy of 10 minutes here, so we don't have too much time. We've had some actually great questions in the chat throughout the whole session that I've already received some really good answers. And I can say that these are some questions that we actually get from a lot of members. So I would really encourage everyone on the call to just take a quick look at those questions and answers that are already in the chat today. I think, Linda, there was one question in the chat that I'm not sure if you had a chance to answer or if it was already in your presentation, if there's something that you wanted to add as a question from Annalise Taylor. What was your process at Penn for getting the data to write to records and getting permission from the university to write info to researchers' records? For those who accepted the permissions link, I'm assuming there's some coordination with HR or academic affairs and permission granted by that unit.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when it comes to the ones who were sent links in the big push by Penn ERA, that was in conjunction with the Office of Research Services. I'd had nothing to do with that. So I don't know if human resources were involved necessarily. So I'm not sure when it comes to that. When it comes to the individual the groups that we've been working with recently, the MED students and the nursing students, they were told that this is what the process is involved. That this is going to be how what's happening, why you would affiliate, and what we would be able to do with that affiliation information. So I think there's a little bit more education that could be done in this area, but it's not something that I have not had any conversations when it comes to HR in terms of this. So it's a good question though.
Yeah, great. Yeah, no, I mean, also since, there's a lot of conversation around ORCID about promoting interinstitutional models and all that kind of stuff. So that's really interesting to hear. Thanks, Linda. Are there any other questions? Please feel free to unmute or post in the chat or raise your virtual Zoom hand. If there's a question that occurs to you later, I will put our emails in the Zoom chat here, and you can send us along questions that you might have at a later date, or really about anything related to the affiliation manager. All right. I would also just point to some resources that are also in the chat, the ORCID Affiliation Manager Guide, and also the CSV template if you didn't get a chance to take a look at those. Those are some great resources to open and bookmark and just have available to you for all future references and all future affiliation manager work as well. All right, I'll maybe just give it another minute for questions, but seeing none, I think that brings our session to a close today. Linda, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your excellent presentation. It's really, really fascinating to see all the work that Penn Libraries is doing. Thanks also to Sheila and John presenting their use cases as well. And thanks to everyone for being here today. Really appreciate your time.
I'm seeing some last minute things in the
Oh,
chat.
perfect. All right, we have last few minutes. So yeah. There's a question here from Sari Burgoyne. Curious to know if anyone had some comms material they could share that give their researchers a heads up receiving affiliation manager requests. Definitely, there are some. I know there's some comms materials that we have that we can share in CRKN for our members. I wonder if Sheila or Linda want to just touch on this quickly.
I don't have anything yet, but that's something that we were working on. And I know that the Penn Medicine had shared that with nursing when we were helping each other with that process. So that's something that, yeah, I can, I'm working to develop basically like a toolkit that we can use with researchers.
I will say we did send out kind of like a warning email to our ORCID US community volunteers and stuff, just saying, hey, you know, in the next couple of weeks, you're going to receive an email from membership at lyrasis.org, because otherwise they would maybe not think to look at that. Just kind of letting them know where the email would be coming from, what the email was going to be about. So we sent them kind of a warning email before we sent the actual like affiliation manager links. I'm happy to share that. I don't know how helpful it would be, but also that's another reason why your ORCID US community and ORCID Canada staff are here, is because we can help you with that communication and kind of crafting that for your organization and helping you think through what would make sense. So definitely don't hesitate to contact us.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think when we've been doing that at CRKN, we've been sending out similar emails alerting our committee members that this is coming through, to watch out for this. And we've also, during our governing committee meetings, letting governing committee members know that they might expect to receive this email as well. So we've been using those channels as well, our governing committee channels, I think, to promote that as well. Great. Yeah, excellent question. These are all excellent questions. Thanks so much, everyone, for your participation and for being here today. And all the recording and notes and slides will be sent out later this week, probably. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks again, Linda. All right. Bye, y'all.